the Unblock Yourself podcast. Our podcast where we have conversations either together or with people who are chasing their dreams, making positive change in the world, and living an intentional and unlocked life. You know how sometimes a conversation comes exactly at the right moment? This one kind of feels like that. Dr. Rebecca Sutherns is somebody we were introduced to well over a year ago, and it was by two of our former podcast guests, Hillary Gold and John Neufeld. And a conversation that always would come up is, when is Rebecca coming on the podcast? And we had the same question. And it was just a matter of time, and we were finally able to make it happen, and we're so glad that we did. Dr. Rebecca Sutherns is a speaker, strategist, facilitator, executive coach, and bestselling author. She's all the things we want to be when we grow up. She spent over 25 years helping leaders and organizations navigate change, transitions, and reinvention. And we talk a little bit about all of that, but we also just talk about some of the real things that are going on in her life and in ours and in all of yours. We talk about parenting, empty nesting, friendship, identity, and what it actually looks like to build a life on purpose instead of just drifting into one. Something we talk about a lot in our programming, writing, and here on this podcast is the idea of feeling stuck. Rebecca gives us a fresh look at what stuck can actually mean. In some cases, it could be stuck, but it could be that there's a transformation that's going on and it's just going slower than you expect it should. So it can feel like stuck, but it's actually not. This one really stuck with us. You see what I did there? There's also this concept she talks about, which is optimize for interesting. This is a life design concept that she repeats to herself as a bit of a mantra, and it is a useful takeaway for all of us. All of our lives could be so much more interesting and exciting if we think about that, if we just optimize for interesting wherever possible. Rebecca is one of the wisest people we've ever had on, and we think that you're going to love this episode. Here is our conversation with Dr. Rebecca Sutherns. Hello and welcome, Rebecca. And I see on the screen you logged in. It says Dr. Rebecca Sutherns. So hold the phone here. Is it welcome, Rebecca? Is it welcome, Dr. Sutherns?
Oh, no, it is Rebecca for sure. I don't know how that even came up. I didn't type it in today. It's clearly from some other use of this platform by somebody much more formal than me. So Rebecca is fine.
Well, as a starting point, I have to say, when I saw that, when you logged in, I went, oh my gosh, this just took on a whole other.
You got to sit up straighter around here, Greg. Put your jacket on.
I got to turn my hat around.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get real. We got to get real. Well, we're thrilled to have a chance to talk to you. And this is your first time meeting Whitney, although.
Yeah, well.
It is, except I was in a Blue Jays jersey when we actually met at the House of Friendship, friendship dinner during the Blue Jays playoff run. So there was a quick hug and hello, but we have never actually had a conversation.
That's right. Then that came back to me too. I'm like, I swear I've met her. And then I thought of exactly that. Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot that it was the Blue Jays.
It was me wearing a Blue Jays jersey to a formal event, having just led a retreat. I literally came from a retreat to that event. Went I don't know if I've really misread this crowd or not, but this is what I'm wearing and this is what we're doing. So here we are. Yeah.
Well,
so I was late and dressed badly and, all the things.
Yeah.
You're in a blue dress.
Yeah, and actually my Blue Jays dress, kind of. I tried. I would have rather been wearing a jersey too, if I'm honest.
And it's worth noting because that's actually a shared connection. John Neufeld is the one who connected us. And we should say, so John was a guest in the podcast about a year ago,
maybe?
A long time ago. So it's well overdue to have this conversation with you because he said you have to talk to Rebecca, but we should chirp him just once because that is the nature.
Well, I have already talked to him this morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So I said our paths haven't crossed in a while, and I just want to make sure you're good. And he said #fabulous, and I said I'm going to assume no sarcasm in that text. And I'm grateful that all is well. And that was it. That was our entire interaction. So, it could have gone either way, but I am choosing to interpret it straight up. He's good.
Perfect.
#fab. I remember when we did see you at that event, everybody in the crowd just wanted to get home and watch the Blue Jays, and he just wanted to drag his speech out for another 20, 30 minutes, right? Yeah. Anyway. Wonderful guy, wonderful event. But let's start here, because, Rebecca, I think we do have a lot in common. You just said you came from a retreat. Yes. You know John Neufeld, who's that common connection. But let's just a little bit of a softball to start. You also have 4 kids.
We have 4 kids.
We also have 4 kids.
That's a lot of children.
And and if we're not mistaken, you're coming off of a wedding weekend where
Yes!
your second got married, which is very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so, but tell us, because our kids are between the ages of 8 and 15.
Mm-hmm.
We want to know, first out of the gate, do your kids get along? And if so, what's the secret? And if not, we can move right on. We can move right on and skip to another topic, or we can really dig into that and this will turn into a parenting session. But
parenting podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so my children are all in their 20s, and I'm not going to be able to say that for much longer because my oldest, Hannah, turns 30 in September. Oh. So I am in the last moments of being able to say that I have 4 kids who are big kids in their 20s. And thankfully, they do all get along now. I would say that there have been patches where different ones had different levels of friction between them at different times, of course. And just the base level of, sibling annoyances that I'm sure punctuated their entire existence. But now that they are adults and not living together, they generally, I think, relative to the, perhaps broader population, do get along really well. And we have 2 of them that live walkable to us in Guelph, where I live. And we have one that got married in September, and she and her husband live in Vancouver. And then those are our 3 girls. And then our youngest is our son, Jonah. And he, thankfully, for this mama's heart, just moved back from BC to Ontario for law school. So he'll be going to U of T in the fall. And he has been majoring in volleyball primarily at the University of British Columbia in Kelowna, the UBCO campus there. So he's up at our cottage in Gravenhurst for the summer when we're not traveling and doing other things. He needed a flexible summer job this year, and so he is hauling lumber and doing other construction-related things with that strong, fit body of his. And it is lovely for us to have him home, and we have all 4 home right now because Claire did get married on Saturday, which was completely magical.
Oh, I bet. Oh my gosh. And I did see the pictures because I follow you on Instagram, and I feel like there's been a series of weddings that maybe it's your kids, maybe
no, two daughters, one in September, one now, and so there's just been a lot of dresses and events and things, and then 3 other cousins in that circle. So the last of the 5 family weddings in a 12-month period happens in July, and that's what we do. We go to weddings. And I have to say, when you're talking about kind of the secret, I don't know exactly the secret, but the one thing that has happened at both weddings that has been my absolute favorite, 2 things related. One is having people fly in for your kids by choice, and having, a third of the room be people that have chosen to come for them. And the other second amazing thing is listening to other people, including their friends, give incredible speeches about your kids. Unreal. So it's been really delightful. And part of the, I'm sure we'll talk about transitions and in-betweens and things. And I feel like there's so many things in parenting that are like that, where it's like one kind of opportunity to surrender after another, right? Of gradually letting go of everything all the time. And so this is another one of those, when I think I'm done and I'm not done. And, this was one more sort of letting go of fully married and gone. And yet has been here every day since and lives 400 meters away. So, there's both.
Wow, that actually couldn't have been a better transition. That was quite literally one of the first questions I wanted to ask, because I did read a lot about these in-between the in-between moments and seasons of life that you talk about quite a bit. And so I was actually curious what, season or moment you're in between right now. And so is that what you would say is just sort of this
Yeah, a bit, right? I mean, I think I would say that when you hear about empty nest, it's so misnamed for people who have big families in particular. So spoiler alert for you guys. Our emptying nest period was a decade long. And that wasn't kids boomeranging back. That was just because there are 4 of them. And it took that long for the family to go from having everyone living at home to having nobody living at home. And so that was a big, long in between for me. I do remember saying to my husband, Tim, when the first one left, I want them all gone or I want them all here. I'm good with both, but the in between I don't like. And the in between was literally 10 years long. And then since they've been all gone, which is kind of 4 years, I guess now, I would say that I'm much more settled into that sort of child, like the kids are gone, but the in between still continues in lots of ways. And so one specific example is that we still live in the house that we raised them in, and it's a renovated church in Guelph. We love it, and it's got character, and it's amazingly located, and it's beautiful, and way too big for 2 people. So what does that look like, and how much longer will we be in this place when we don't need the number of rooms we have? But what I think is really becoming super important to me is that I'm also a grandparent, and we have two grandbabies that live walkable that are 7 and almost 4, and they don't call me grandma, they call me Minga, but Minga's house.
Oh, Minga.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that.
We're going to come back to that in a minute.
Yeah, but when you are the place, like when you have grandma's house, right? Like my house is now grandma's house. And I don't know if either of you have had the opportunity to have a grandma's house, but this is grandma's house, and you don't get rid of grandma's house easily. Like that's not a thing. Yeah. So like there's a vibe, there's just, we've had examples in our family when the grandparent house gets sold and they downsize to a condo someplace, all very practical and understandable and necessary. The whole dynamic of the family changes. And so I feel very much, maybe too much, the guardian of the dynamic. And the place is part of that. And so what does that look like once kids are married? And the fact we've been having conversations about, there's a room literally right over the wall from me where one married daughter still has her fairly intact high school bedroom there. And I'm like, okay, you're married and living in Vancouver. When does this get cleaned out so that it becomes a something else? But we're also going, we don't need it for anything else. It's too big. Should we move? Nope, can't possibly. So that's kind of it's very practical, but the emptying nest is a long time. And I think one of the things that I love about that is that it allows me to live what I'm coaching, in the sense that I think people's experiences of transition have an expectation overlaid on them that they are going to be faster than they actually are. And research would show that, my own experience would show that we expect to be able to move through stuff and get the hang of it faster than most of the time that we can. And I think we need to normalize big transitions happening fairly often and taking way longer than we expect.
Well, okay, so we are going to come back to the Minga thing, but if we can park that for just a moment, just over here, I wrote it down on the page. We need to talk about Minga. But before we do, you just pulled on a thread that I'm interested to dig on a little bit. So you talk about in-between moments. You have been in an in-between moment in this context yourself for over a decade. And to some degree, it sounds like it continues. At what point does being in an in-between or in a transition translate to being stuck? And I guess on that thread, why do people, in your experience and in the work and the coaching you do, why do so many people stay stuck if that is in fact where they are
in the in-between moments?
Well, is it in, I guess there's a two-parter, is if you're navigating through a transition and it's taking longer than you expected, does that mean you're stuck? And then on the other side of that, if you are in fact stuck, why do people stay stuck?
Right. Yes.
Just in your experience and in the work that you do, would love your perspective on that, because I'm this transition thing is intriguing.
It's big. Yeah. And I appreciate the reframe of the question, because I think sometimes when something is taking longer than we think, we assume we're stuck. And we may or may not be. It may just be the nature of the experience is that it moves slowly. And or that it is entirely healthy and appropriate for us to stay put in one thing, one state, one place for a bit, to let something happen, let something unfold, let something metabolize a bit. And so I feel like the idea of stuckness is, I was going to say subjective, but I don't always trust my own radar about that, because I think sometimes we can feel stuck when in fact maybe I remember talking in one retreat about dormancy and how something that is dormant in nature can look dead, but it's not dead. It's just amassing resources and resting until it blooms again, right? And that's not stuck. That's important work. And so I watch out for kind of this idea of stuckness, because I think the other side of it, the experience of, hey, I should really get moving, is I think it can happen in a couple of different ways, in the sense that I think a sense of movement and learning and growth and some sort of forward momentum, even if the journey is long and slow, is helpful for us. Momentum is helpful. And so I think stuckness, if we feel like there is just no forward movement and we can't even find forward, I think that's a really hard place, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong place for us to be. But it's true that our brain and our heart hate this. Like, we just are really, really not good at in between. And even as I heard you feed back to me what I said about being in this like decade long in between, I'm like, when does it stop being in transition and just start being your life, right? I mean, like there's so many things that are always in flux. And I think one of the things I have an issue with some of the writing in this space is that it implies that we go through transitions linearly, first of all, but also one at a time. And that's never the case. At least it hasn't been in my experience, where, you've got a whole series of adjustments going on. And that's why I really like my work in adaptability, because I think you're just constantly adapting to the new situation you're in, or the new version of yourself that you're getting to know or that you're trying to shape. And so I think that I'm learning that it is, rather than thinking of it as a single transition or even as transition overlaid on transition, it might just be learn to adapt to whatever is going on. And I think as I've kind of navigated some of those parenting transitions, that's where I land, is going, so, just before we hit record today, one of my very big kids showed up and helped herself to something from my fridge. It's like, okay, this is still the thing, right? So yes, she's got kids of her own and lives in her own place and is fully independent and fabulously functioning and helping herself to my fridge. So I think that's just, I love that. But we have to learn to live in the mess of it rather than expecting it to be different.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. One thing you said, one thing I was thinking about on adaptability, curious if, do you think people are born with that, or is it something that they have to learn and build over time through experiences?
Yeah.
On the adaptability, I think some people just with change, I mean, I'm used to change. I had a lot of change in my childhood and navigated all sorts of things in life. So I like change. And if there's no change for a while, I'm kind of a little bit bored. And so I don't know if that's called being adaptable or what the definition might be, but I'm just curious, do you think, people are naturally adaptable or born with it, or is it something that's built?
I think it's a both and. Just like, someone might have exceptional sort of athletic skill at something. They've got really good hand-eye coordination, and they need to practice and they get better, right? So I think there's, probably a base level that people are born with in different ways, and then, or at different levels, and then their experiences shape that, and then they can also choose to get better at it. So I talk about adaptability as a learnable set of skills, and there are lots of ways to be adaptable. So it's not a single unitary thing. I am adaptable or I'm not. It's not binary, and it's not one skill. Adaptability, the way I work with it using a tool called Adaptability Quotient, it has 15 elements that contribute to it. And you can imagine that 15 things can be combined in literally a trillion and something ways at different levels. And so what I love about that work is that it's like having a toolkit where the tools let you be adaptable, but you can choose which tools to pull out. And so if you prefer to work with a hammer rather than working with a screwdriver or with some other thing, use the hammer to be adaptable. So there's lots of choice in it, and lots of learning and skill development in it. And so what I like to do with teams and individuals too is to say, let's figure out your preferred way of adapting and let's get really good at that. rather than feeling like you have to be good at all the ways or feel like you had to be born into this or you weren't. It's, let's get a bit of visibility on your preferred tools that are going to help you adapt, and let's use those. And so there's a whole bunch of them, most of which we already have some experience with. Maybe it's grit. Maybe it's mental flexibility. Maybe it's the support of our team. There's tons of them. And so I can help people figure out their preferred way, because like you said, Whitney, there are people who love to adapt, like this, they love change. And part of that comes from having been given, and maybe this may or may not be your experience, but if we are given space to use the tools that we find easy to adapt, the research would show that adaptability actually energizes us. So people don't need to go, more change or another, whatever, change management initiative. It's like, if you are allowed to be responsive to whatever the new situation requires in a way that matches how you are wired and what your preferences are and what you're good at, you're going to be fine. Like, you're going to actually love it. It's, I think of it for me, I'm really not an Excel spreadsheet girl at all. If you said to me, put me on a committee and said, you are the Excel queen, I could learn it and get kind of like, from a 4 out of 10 to a 5.5 if I worked my tail off. But I'm still the 5.5 out of 10 Excel girl. You do not want me doing this. You want to give it to the 8 out of 10, help her become a 9 out of 10, and let me do the stuff that I'm good at. So if I'm being forced into adapt using Excel, I'm a mess. If you say adapt using conversations with people, all over it, I'm good. So it has something to do with that.
Interesting.
So I'm intrigued by this, and if you're okay to talk about it, would love to dig into the adaptability quotient a little bit, because you talked about there being 15 different characteristics. Maybe you could give an example of a few of what those skills are.
Sure.
And you spoke about a little bit about grit as one as an example, because I agree with the idea of it being either born or a skill. I think there's lots of things that can feel like they're intuitive, but they are in fact skills. And so we'd love some examples of what those things are, and where you see people think, oh, I just don't have this, or I do, where you can in fact help them build that as a skill.
Absolutely. So what I would say is that all of the pieces of this are malleable and learnable and improvable. So I don't think any of them are fixed, but some of them are stickier than others. So it's easier to change some than others. So let's think about them in 3 categories. One is a skill, like an actual personal ability. Grit would be one of those. Resilience would be one of those. And it uses work by people would have heard of. So grit is Angela Duckworth's work on grit. Like, it's not sort of made up and using it as some other term. It's actually her work. Mindset is Carol Dweck's work on fixed and growth mindsets. It's that kind of thing. So abilities are there, and you can dial those up or down. Then there's kind of a character segment, which again can be dialed up or down, but has a little more stickiness. And so that might be your degree of extroversion, for example, or your level of hope, or your level of risk aversion. Those kinds of things are harder to change, but you could. And some of them, they're more like a continuum, where if you are more like one of them, the risk aversion one, the language is play to protect or play to win. It's very contextual, because if you are like playing poker, you're like all the chips in the middle of the table, you are a play to win person, more adaptable, but adaptability might not be the only metric of success, and maybe you're being a bit reckless, right? So I've done the adaptability work with childcare providers. They are big on play to protect, not highly adaptable on that element, but I tell you, if they're looking after my babies, I want them to be good at play to protect. So we've got to put a bit of context around it, but there's these character elements, skills, and then the third one I love, and that is your environment. And again, harder to change because you're one person trying to change the water that you're swimming in, basically. But what we know is that our ability to be adaptable has a great deal to do with the environment we're in. And so the team we work with, the emotional health of the organization that we're employed by, the level of work stress we're under, how proud we are of the company we work for, those kinds of things actually affect our adaptability. And that's built right into this tool of assessment, rather than saying, how adaptable are you as an individual human, and then putting you into this environment. It's saying, no, that environment actually affects your individual ability to adapt. So if I'm working in a really like conservative, beige, low ceiling, fluorescent light insurance company, it's very different than if I'm at Communitech or Google and I'm taking a curly slide to get to my desk. I will show up differently, right? So, you guys are sitting in this beautiful environment right now. You work in this inspiring co-working environment. The work you do will be qualitatively different than if you were sitting in some gray basement alone someplace. So I love that about this, because there's all kinds of levers then that we can pull to get better at adaptability, including literally where we're sitting to do our work. Like, it doesn't have to be, I have to come up with a big like identity shift. It can honestly be, one tweak to our environment, or, one step in the direction of hope, which actually of the 15 things is the number one, is the strongest predictor of our adaptability is hope. Learnable skill. Love that. So there's just all kinds of ways to get good at it. And the composite interesting ways of combining these help us to see things like, how much is change uncertainty impeding a team's performance? How ready are they to embrace change, or to reskill, or to innovate in certain ways? What is their preference in terms of the pathway to innovation? So what I say to people is, you don't have a choice of whether you adapt. We have to. But you do have a choice of how fast, but also which tools or pathways you use, and why would we not use our preferred ones that are easy for us? And so it's got kind of a, for me at least, it has a real strengths-based kind of place to say, let's use the way that we love, and then we'll be energized by it much more easily than making me learn Excel.
Okay. Thank you for that. Just walking through that. So, and I think it was skills and abilities, character, and environment were the three broad buckets. I think it's powerful because, this is a big focus of your work, adaptability. This is a huge, and if you characterize it as a skill set, a little bit of who you are and a little bit of where you are, it's a thing that everybody needs more of. And so this is going to be an annoying question, likely. But if somebody's listening to this and says, I want to become more adaptable, I want to, and I'm listening to this podcast, so hit me, Rebecca. What are your quick tips on how to become more adaptable? And because it's not a simple thing. You put a lot of work and research into this, but what's a quick takeaway if somebody's looking at improving that in their life?
All right, I'll give you like a light one and a heavy one, okay? The light one is expose yourself to a variety of experiences. So whether that is like through reading about them, or through traveling, or through diversifying your social network, variety gives us all kinds of things that feed into adaptability. And it's a, kind of circuitous pathway that I won't bore you with unless you want to go more into it, but it has to do with curiosity and mental flexibility and a bunch of pieces of this. Rest, fun. There's just all kinds of reasons why this does this. So when I look at all the pathways that can help us be more adaptable, I go, live an interesting life. I just got new stickers. I should have had them nearby that say optimize for interesting, right? That's the light version, but super fun. The heavier version is call me and we'll do the assessment.
Of course,
It's actually data science and visible, like good data visualization that can say, hey, you might think that you're really strong in this area and that you're terrible in these other ways. And the actual data might show something different. And the way I see that showing up is when leaders go, oh, everyone on my team hates change. And then we do the assessment. You go, actually, there's a couple of change champions hidden in this mix that are just being so almost like suppressed by the environment that you didn't realize how awesome they could be at this if you unleash that potential. And so, for people that like metrics and actual evidence, we have a way to do this. It's a 25-minute assessment, and then we coach you through it to whatever degree you want. But that would be the other way, is to get some visibility on the actual state of affairs, because how to get better at adaptability depends on where you're starting. And so I'd like some visibility. It's like doing imaging if you go to a doctor to say, hey, what's going on with me? they're likely going to say, let's whatever, get an x-ray or an ultrasound or something so that we can see what's going on, and then we can figure out our next steps. So that's kind of the nerdy, sort of data science side of it that I want. But the lighter version, but super important, is optimized for interesting.
Yeah, I love that. There was something, I think it came up at our retreat, but maybe it was even you that said it, but do interesting things and interesting things will happen. Or maybe this is a quote.
That was Bob Mathers. That was from our keynote speaker, Bob Mathers. That came out of his stories. Yeah.
Got it. But I love that, right? It's like, do interesting things will happen.
And I want to just like riff off of that for one moment, because I want to acknowledge that one piece I'm learning about in this space is that curiosity and variety and an interesting life, etc., that bucket is not evenly distributed, and it is a feature of privilege. And so that's not to say that people who have less privilege can't live an interesting life. Of course they can, and they do. But I just want to acknowledge that there is something overlaid on this that easy for me to say live an interesting life when I'm leaving for Zimbabwe on Saturday, right? So I just want to really be clear that I want to hear, I'm training myself to hear the privilege in what I'm saying. And I'm also saying there are ways to access that kind of interesting life that don't require getting on an airplane, but could be accessed through reading really interesting biographies, right? Or trying to do something that puts you in contact with people who are different than you. So there's ways of doing this that don't require a travel budget. But I want to acknowledge that, many of us that live interesting lives do so because we're well-resourced.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I love that. And we acknowledge that too, just in the programming we do. It's because we're like, be an entrepreneur or solopreneur and, live a life that lights you up. Like, yes, but, you have to do that and acknowledge just that, like the privilege that I know we have to be able to do the work that we're doing. So I really appreciate that call out. I want to pivot slightly.
Totally. Thank you for taking us through that. Because and just reflecting, and because I think we got to pivot off of it, but how that's landing for me is when we, in our position of privilege, we traveled to Costa Rica. We did a trip with the kids over the break, and I think that I recall everybody feeling nervous the first day we landed, and everyone's trying. Everything is unfamiliar and everything is different, but everything's interesting, and just seeing how the kids and us just loosened up and became it was that adaptability, how we just became more comfortable as time went on to go into a store and try to have a conversation. And anyway, I think it, as you expose yourself to more different things, it becomes easier to adapt to more different things. And so I really appreciate that example. Yeah,
absolutely. And think of it like I wrote a book called Elastic a few years ago. When I think about like a muscle being stretchy, it gets more flexible the more we stretch it, right? So that makes sense to me. Where did you want to go with it, Whitney?
Well, I was just curious because I know that you do a lot of work primarily with mission-based organizations. So sort of maybe a two-part question. Why is it a values alignment for you? Why is it that you focus on mission, and potentially it's, the type of people that are at these organizations that you enjoy working with? That's kind of part one to the question. Part two is I'd love to hear just like, what is your mission?
Okay. First one would be, so yes to all of what you said. I mean, I love the people that work in mission-aligned organizations. There is a values alignment for me. And I think I do better work when I care about the organization that I'm working with getting better at what they do. So if they are doing something that I don't care about or value, and I'm not meaning this from a very sort of like, it doesn't have to be like highly righteous work. Do you know what I mean? Like it could easily just be something sort of baseline medium, but I love the people and what they like. Don't you love talking to people about what lights them up? Yes. So if they're doing something that lights them up and I can help them do that, even if I don't care about it, I'm good with that. But if all of us are just kind of collectively agreeing that what they do doesn't matter and is pretty boring, I'm not going to be able to bring my energy to what they do and as well. And I think I'm learning that the main currency that I work in is energy, actually. Yes, people pay me money to do what I do, and there's other kinds of currencies, but I think the main currency that I am dealing in is energy. And I don't think I realized that until fairly recently. But when I talk to my clients about what it's like to work with me, they talk about my energy, they talk about their energy when they're done and how that has shifted. And so I think the energetic, and I don't mean that in a really woo-woo kind of way, I mean it in a really practical way, the energy match needs to be strong. And at a really practical entrepreneurial place, it's hard to change markets. So once you have a market and therefore a network of people and relationships and knowledge and vocabulary and history, etc., CV, in a particular niche, even if that niche for me is fairly large in the social purpose sector, be it, food security or housing or environment or whatever it is, me shifting over to build a whole new network and vocabulary in other kinds of work, I could do it. My skills are transferable there, but that's a bigger shift than shifting, say, my programming or my messaging or my methods or something like that. So that's one. The second part, you asked me about my mission. I think there's kind of, again, the really practical business-oriented answer to that question, and then there's kind of the existential one. So I'll start with the more practical one. I think I am about helping people align what's important to them with what they actually do. And so that can happen in strategy, that can happen through retreats, that can happen in coaching. It's really about helping people imagine their next chapter. But in doing that, I want to do it in a way that lines up what matters to them with what they do. Because when we have that happen, that energy that I mentioned is almost like focused in, like it's like a laser rather than being sort of diluted across a bunch of things. And so not that you only have to do one thing, but I think having a clear sense of alignment helps us be more energized and effective in what we're doing. And so I think that's true organizationally. I think it's true personally. And so that would be, kind of the mission of what I do in my work and life in that sense. But when I think about kind of the bigger, broader stuff, there is bigger stuff. Like of the roles that I hold, for example, I'm getting some pretty significant clarity on which ones are most important when, and where I need to be spending my time and which relationships I need to be actively investing in and all of that. So, we were talking earlier about my grandkids, so I could just talk about them all day long. So just keep asking me questions about Tatum and Remy and I'll talk about them. But it's true that I am so clear that investing in them is very close to the highest, spot on my food chain, right? I am utterly replaceable in almost everything else I do. Perhaps now even including parenting, because of my kids being that much older. Not to say I'm not important to them, but they're good. Tatum and Remy need me. I am the only Mingo they have, and that is where I need to give my focus. And so therefore, there's all kinds of, and like, it's almost like I'm living in my own life what I'm working on with clients, in the sense that, does that mean I spend every minute of every day with them? No. Does it, are there many days where I go, oh, it would be really helpful to my daughter if I could be on school pickup every day, for example? That would make her life easier, cheaper. Am I doing that? Nope, because I have a business to run. So could I? Yes. So there are choices inside that where you go, highest value is clear. Day-to-day choices of how we live that out, I'm constantly wrestling with, because they are my most important. And yet, am I willing to be the school pickup at 3:30 every day? I am not at this point. So there's some tension in that for me. I don't want to make it sound quite so clean, because it's not as neat as it might sound.
And riffing off of that, because it's a beautiful answer and a collection of things that really goes back to where we started, transitions and transformations. Do you have a sense for what would change for you to be the Minga who picks up the grandkids at 3? Can you sense that in yourself of what would need to change, or is that abstract and that day may come and it may never come? Do you have a sense?
Yeah, I don't think it's abstract, but you're right that it may never come. And it may not be like, there's just one of the transitions that I've had to continue to work through is what kind of grandma I want to be. Because you can answer questions like that at a really high level of like, I want to be a good one, I want to be a loving one, I want to be an involved one. And we go through this in strategy development all the time where that's true and important. And it's not enough of a filter to actually help you make good decisions because, of course, everybody wants that. And there's a cajillion ways to show up in ways that do that. I'm just going to pause here, guys, because I lost you and you got all pixelated. You good?
Oh.
You okay?
I think we're okay.
Are we back?
Yeah, now you are. You just came back.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I saw something flicker, but
Something flickered.
I lost you for a sec, like it went black, and then you came
Okay.
back. So I'll just sort of start that piece again.
we're back.
Yeah, right.
I might be able to say I want to be this, loving, involved, available grandparent, but there are tons of ways to do that practically. And so I could be that person without having to be the school pickup grandma. So having to be done work by 3:30 every day, I did for many years in raising my own kids. And I really didn't like that part of parenting, honestly, but I did like being the person who gets to hear their first stories right in the door after school. So you got to have both, right? If you're going to be that person, you got to be able to stop work at 3:30. So I don't want to make it sound like being the 3:30 parent is the holy grail, but there's something magical about that. And I do go, I could do that. And so because I know a lot of your listeners are self-employed, let's talk about this. I have a pretty crappy boss most of the time, and that's me, right? Like there is no reason I couldn't be at that school for 3:30 every single day if I wanted to be. So I don't get to hide behind some random scheduler that told me I have to, be marked for attendance and sit in my chair till 5:00. That's not my situation. And so I need to take responsibility then for the choices that I'm making in how I am and I'm not willing to show up for them. So for this particular season, and I've talked to my daughter about this, and she said, no, I love the fact that my kids are seeing you as a, successful business person and that you have work that's important to you and that they are not the center of everybody's universe all the time as much as we might want them to be. And I'm part, thankfully, of a family ecosystem where my own mother can be helpful with them much of the time. So it's a team, right? It's a you talk about taking a village. We have a multi-generational village that is making this work, for which I'm very grateful. And I feel like I've gotten very tactical on this, but I feel like it's an example where our big values are kind of there, but you need more, like almost like a finer mesh filter to actually help you make decisions, because there's tons of decisions that will align with the big values. It's those day-to-day next level down kinds of ones where things get a little crunchy.
I really like that. I think I need to, when you were just talking about like the filtering, it's like, yeah, I want to be a good mom, but what does that mean? Like, it's not enough to just have that higher level. I feel like that's going to stick with me for sure. And just like filtering down, like, okay, let's take that a step further, another step further.
Right.
Filters. Yeah.
Yeah, because values show up as behaviors, right? And so in organizations and in our lives, and there's tons of good ways, like legitimate, amazing ways to be a good mom. So in this particular season with this particular kid, how does good mom show up? And, and also without overlaying, perfectionist mom or whatever else is going to be unhelpful in that scenario.
Yes, very unhelpful.
Yeah. I think just like there's 15 elements of adaptability, there's tens, dozens, hundreds of ways and combinations to show up to be a good parent.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to how to show up and be a good entrepreneur, how to show up and be a good whatever.
Wife or whatever. Husband. Yeah.
Partner. Yeah. I think there's something to that, Rebecca. I think that's probably just a really good spot to bring things to a bit of a head. I think we had one last question, and you've alluded to some things in the course of our conversation with you having 4 kids and you becoming a grandparent and you continuing to grow your business. Is there something that you're reimagining in your life right now that would be sort of a way to culminate all of what we've talked about so far today?
Yeah, I don't know if it would count as culmination, but I think there is constantly a reimagining of what the next chapter looks like. And so, our family's just come through a lot of big, happy, good milestones. 35 years married this month, daughter married, son graduating, lots of big rituals, milestones, moments to celebrate and mark. And it makes you go, okay, now what? I mean, we were teasing my daughter that just got married that she's got time for another part-time job now because she doesn't have the mental load of planning this wedding, right? And there's a bit of that where we've had some very big things. And in fact, I mentioned just when this is being recorded, we are in fact leaving for Zimbabwe on Saturday with everybody. So there's 10 of us. We've planned this trip for many years to celebrate our 35th, and our grandkids are half, they have African heritage. And so we wanted to get them there. So there's some very big sort of concrete event kinds of things. But I think when all of those that busyness kind of ends, which for me will be roughly Canada Day, I think there'll be a moment to go, okay, what's next? And I think my temperament is get on to the next thing, right? I like busy, I like varied, life is a buffet. I'm an Enneagram 7, we are all about it, right? And so I need to think about what this next chapter looks like because I'm not in empty nest phase anymore. And I think sometimes what I do is I stay with a story too long. And so I think of myself as an empty nester right now, meaning for me, figuring out what that empty nest is like. No, I'm 4 years out of that now, actually. And I need to figure out what this next piece looks like. And I think one of the challenges for that for me is that I don't, and this is not a, violins and woe is me story, but I don't feel like I have a ton of role models in this space. Because when I think about the people that I've, been exposed to, a lot of them, like even my own mother, grandmother, mother-in-law, they would have been retired by my age. They were retired by my age, or they weren't. My grandmother, in her case, hadn't worked for pay at all anyway. But there's not a lot of women I know that are fairly young grandparents running their own thing, heading towards 60 and going, what do I want this to look like on the one hand? And also when I look back 10 years ago and what I wanted this to look like, I am so grateful to be able to say that most of it does look like that. Like we're really intentional about kind of life by design where we can. And I am living that life right now. And what I want to make sure I do is notice that, be grateful for that, not sit in any sense of discontent around that, but actually go, no, this was the goal. And there are lots of pieces to that and what I mean by that, but it has to do, yes, with, some of the, work pieces and financial pieces and things that are in place, but it also has to do with relationship quality and, what I want that next piece to look like. And so I think for me, it's the next part of the next chapter is going to be reimagining what friendship looks like at this stage. It's not proximity friendships anymore in terms of the other parents on my kids' soccer teams, right?
Right.
But it's also, I travel a lot and I love that and I'm thankful to do that, but it fragments my relationships a bit because we live here in Guelph and also at our cottage, and I'm traveling a lot of the time. And it means that my ability to be a consistent friend and I have this image of wishing I had, that girlfriend that I walked with every evening. Well, it's so ridiculous. I'm not in the same place every evening. That's not a dream that's going to happen, right? So I need to think about what my social health looks like and how to contribute to my communities, plural, when I'm still thankfully at a stage of being very sort of globally mobile, because there will be stages in my life where I'm not, and I'm willing to pay the cost of that relationally right now because I feel like it might be a very small window. And so I'm trying to take advantage of it, but I recognize the cost of that to the friendships and other relationships that I have. So that's a piece that we're kind of reimagining. And then, we'll see where work takes both me and Tim over the next few years, because we've got a lot of flex in that and I'm thankful for it.
That's great. Well, Rebecca, there's a couple closing questions that we've got for you. Before we ask how people can find you, where they can reach you, you've got to tell us about Minga. You have to tell us where that came from. Everyone's on the edge of their seats.
Oh, everyone's dying to know. Well,
we'd get angry.
I've grown into this name. Like, I absolutely love it. Let me say that. And I didn't know if I would. When we became grandparents 7 years ago, I was not ready. It was not in the script that I had written for myself. And part of that was that I wasn't ready to be called Granny or something. And so we were trying to, but we didn't want it to have a name that was super cheesy, whatever. Big decision about this. Because, first grandchild sets the tone for everybody, right? This is actually like a generational decision. So this was, you can hear how uptight I was getting about it. So anyway, it turns out that my grandmother, with whom I was very close, we had 5 generations alive in our family for 1 year. So she only died 6 years ago. Wow. And so I knew her into my 50s. And she called her grandmas Minga, apparently because her brother couldn't say grandma properly and it just stuck. So it's a name that's been in our family. But then when I looked it up, it has an African connection, and it means something big has happened, drop everything and help. That was our situation. And so it just was exactly right. And the other hilarious thing is that my husband, Tim, goes by Coach. So it's Minga and Coach. And so I still feel like there's some sort of like children's book series, Coach and Minga go to the zoo, Coach and Minga go to the whatever. So we are Coach and Minga. And it's funny because even my kids' friends now call us that. Like we are Coach and Minga to lots of people, and not just to the 2 that call us that. And I help with a kids camp in the summer for 1 week. So with the kids at our church, and they all call me Minga. Like I'm known as Minga in circles that matter to me.
You are Minga. I love that. That's so great. I had a friend that her grandchildren call her Mimi because it was the same. She's like, I don't want to be Nana or Grandma and nothing like that. So Mimi. So anyway, I have a bit of time. I'm hoping I have a lot of time, but I just
want to say I wasn't trying to be like ageist about this. I did feel a bit like I wasn't trying to pretend I was 30 when I wasn't. Right. But we needed something that felt like us. And my best girlfriend and I joked that we should have been the people that you now see on Instagram that have those accounts where they suggest baby names. Like I love naming people. This is a big obsession of mine. And we both agree that we should have, like, if only we'd been born 20 years later, we would have been the ones with the Instagram accounts of here's what you should name your baby. So this actually mattered to me quite a lot. And having an opportunity to choose a new name, I wanted to be better at it than just the standard 3. So it wasn't an ageism thing. I hope it was more just this is a big thing, so choose well.
So good.
That is so good.
Yeah, I love that. I like Coach too. Well, I'm gonna put that in our back pocket for a few years down the road. I'm also tucking it in my back pocket.
It did mean, I have to say, when Tatum did her first soccer game when she was 3 or 4 years old, and we said, like, go run out to your coach, she was like, that is not Coach. We had to teach them that there are other people that do go by that name, but she was like not about it. Like, that is clearly not Coach. You know that, I know that, I'm not going on that field.
Yeah, like no,
so
that's not.
There's been some retraining.
Oh, that's great. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for your time and for being here. I hope you have a great trip. Safe travels. And if people do want to just check out, where to get in touch with you, where should they do that?
Yep. My website is RebeccaSutherns.com, just like my name. And there is a page there. If you do /podcast, there's some information about various kinds of podcast conversations that I've had. So you could go there. But specifically, people might be interested in some of the adaptability work is described there. And also, I have some card decks that I use, which I know sounds a bit random from the conversation we just had. But I find sometimes people are going, I don't want to invest in a full coaching program to figure out how to reimagine my next chapter. Maybe what I need is just a little nudge of creativity. And so they're called possibility packs. They're available on Amazon, but you can also see on the site where to get them. And we have them for use with organizations and with individuals. So for people that are leading people in a corporate setting, or in a coaching or individual setting, those are there. So have a look. My books are there, and looking at a new book coming out probably later this year on some of these transition issues. So hoping to get that posted pretty soon.
Well, very good. Yeah, we will certainly share all of that. Rebecca, back to again where we started. We do just seem to have a lot in common, that you've done things and are doing work that is deeply meaningful to us, and I think it's definitely a path that we'd love to chart for ourselves in some way with the retreats that we run and the work that we do. So while you may be looking for role models, you're certainly one for us.
Thanks so much.
So thank you for being that, and thank you for your time. This has been great.
I've appreciated the conversation. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today. If you like this episode, hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you'd be willing to leave a rating or a review, we do read every single one. And it genuinely helps more people find the show and helps us keep doing what we're doing. And if you do like this episode and what we're talking about here, you'll probably love our 100% free bi-weekly newsletter. It's called the Vienna 5, and you can find the link to that in the show notes. Music for this podcast is by Moby, who we still think is very cool. We're glad you're here. Thanks so much for listening.